Tokyo Ghoul is the wildest crossover we have seen yet for Dead by Daylight. And of course, the internet is split. So the debate that really stands is, does Tokyo Ghoul belong in Dead by Daylight in the first place? Or is it a step too far? That's the biggest question. So it's time to see if Tokyo Ghoul really belongs in DBD. So there's two major sides of this argument, the side that's obviously for Tokyo Ghoul being in DBD, and the side that's against. Let's go ahead and dissect what both sides have to say, and then give an overall opinion. The first side is the people that are for Tokyo Ghoul. In their eyes, horror is horror, as long as they're in a same medium. Them, Tokyo Ghoul is survival horror, psychological horror, so it fits well for DBD. It's something that's not necessarily a lighthearted anime. It's dark, it's twisted, it's brutal, and it has crazy themes. They also typically compare this to something like Silent Hill or Resident Evil, as it's in the same sort of umbrella. Another good point that this side makes is that Dead by Daylight has evolved from just having slashers. We have a sci-fi AI, an literal ink demon, so certainly having something like Tokyo Ghoul isn't necessarily too far-fetched in their eyes. Finally, when it really boils down to it lore-wise, the entity can literally pull anybody into its realm, and that's sort of exactly what we've seen happening with this chapter. The entity literally said, hey, you're coming to my realm, you're mine now. And then of course we have the other side that's debating that Tokyo Ghoul just doesn't fit into DBD. It's literally an anime, why is it here? Their main point is that Tokyo Ghoul is an anime. It's not really the same style that Dead by Daylight suits when you compare it to other major licenses like Freddy, Leatherface, or even something like Saw. Another major argument is that the aesthetics of Tokyo Ghoul just don't work in something like Dead by Daylight. Some feel that the proportions, the animations, the way it looks itself, that cartoony feel, doesn't necessarily work in the world of DBD. And for some players, it even breaks the horror immersion that you would have, because if you're playing one match running away from Michael Myers, then you're playing another game where you're literally being chased by an anime character. They're worried about the floodgates being open for so many things coming into Dead by Daylight that just don't necessarily work, and then Dead by Daylight becoming pretty much the Fortnite of the horror scene. And while both of these sides have pretty good arguments, I think the main answer is clear in my opinion, and that is yes, Tokyo Ghoul belongs in Dead by Daylight. Now I need to preface that by saying I have never seen an anime in my life. Tokyo Ghoul was the first one that I watched because I knew it was coming into DBD. Anime is just not my thing, and a couple of years ago I probably would have agreed with you and said, hey, this just doesn't work in Dead by Daylight, why is it coming into the game? But objectively looking at everything now, looking at the stats, looking at the facts, it belongs in DBD for a multitude of reasons. The biggest reason of them all is that this is going to bring in a huge new core audience into DBD, which is a win for everybody. Already we have seen the effects of that, with any post relating to Tokyo Ghoul on any of the Dead by Daylight socials are becoming some of their most popular things that they've ever shown to the community, right behind Five Nights at Freddy's. The stats themselves don't lie, the numbers are there and people are supporting it. So for those that say, hey, nobody cares about Tokyo Ghoul, this is weird, numbers obviously tell a different story. And at the end of the day, this is good for everybody. The more players that are coming into the game enjoying DBD, means that more money is being made by the devs, and if executed properly by behavior, it means more resources, assets, and things will go into the company, which then gives us a better game at the end of the day. This sets up the potential for even bigger collaborations in the future, potentially more resources for devs to work on to make the game even better, and even doing things like what we've recently seen with huge quality of life changes, because now they have access to doing these things. They've even been on record saying that just a few years ago, they weren't able to do certain things and push the limits of certain killers, and now they're able to, and this is definitely one of the direct correlations of that. With all the new players coming into the game, it is absolutely fantastic. It's in no way, shape, or form a bad thing for DBD. Now, I'm not necessarily here to convince you that yes, it 100% fits into DBD, because yes, it isn't necessarily a classic horror like Myers or Freddy. It's definitely a horror adjacent in some ways. Tokyo Ghoul definitely has a big overarching theme of horror, so personally for me, it does fit, but it's not your classical type of horror. So I can understand that point of view to an extent. However, when you look at it objectively, for big chapters that are deemed horror classics, such as Chucky or Alien coming into the fog, it really had little to no impact. For the people that really cared about it, they were already playing Dead by Daylight. These are folks that already have been here, they knew about Dead by Daylight, and the same can be said for most people. If you're a big horror icon fan, some of the classics are up your alley, you probably already know about DBD. And them bringing in a big chapter that's super classic, let's use Jason for an example, probably won't have that much of a pull because everybody knows about it already. And we've seen exactly this happen with Alien and Chucky coming into DBD. While huge iconic chapters, the bottom line is it didn't really move the needle whatsoever. While bringing in chapters like this is great for Dead by Daylight to complete their Hall of Fame of killers, it really doesn't have that much of impact on the game. And when it's a big license and like that, and you're paying tons of money to bring it into the game to then have little to no impact, it's not really a good look. My point being here is that Dead by Daylight has to expand their horizons one way or another. They have to look to different styles of horror because if they don't, the community just won't grow, the game won't flourish, and we'll just be at the same spot we've always been. They have to think of new and innovative ways to level up what they're already doing, and this is the exact way that they can do it. As I said, I'm not necessarily here to convince you that something like this belongs in the game. If you truly feel like it doesn't belong in the game, you don't need to play the DLC. It's plain and simple. You don't need to waste your money that you've earned for something that you think just doesn't work for DBD. And regardless, I know there will be some pushback and people saying, well, even if I don't pay for it, I'll still end up seeing it in the game. It's not about paying or spending the money, it's just seeing that into the game. But at the end of the day, as I said, there are way more pros than there are cons of bringing something like this into the game. And this isn't necessarily the first time we've seen this style of argument. When Lara Croft was introduced or Nicolas Cage, the same debates were going on, but yet we've seen some really good peak numbers when both of these chapters came into DBD. The biggest takeaway from all of this, I think, is that DBD, no matter what, they're still doing justice to the players. Forget everything that's attached with Tokyo Ghoul, the lore, everything like that. Let's focus on the character itself. What Dead by Daylight has provided, at least from what I've seen, is a fun, new, high skill ceiling killer. And that's exactly what people like. It's one of the reasons why Wesker was so popular. It was something that was super duper fun, it was unique to play, and it had a pretty high skill ceiling if you knew how to do some of the techs. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Tokyo Ghoul. They're pretty much following the exact same formula that they've done with Wesker, and it's already been a huge success. Apart from all the bugs on the PTB and the chaotic server experience, the overall chapter is pretty damn good. At first, a lot of people were saying that this was really weak, until, of course, like always, we gave it some more time to understand and to playtest a little bit more. Lord and behold, people are absolutely enjoying this chapter. So as I said, the pros just outweigh the cons. Dead by Daylight has done justice to players that know little to nothing about Tokyo Ghoul with a fun, new, interesting character. And for those people that are big fans of it, they've done even a bigger justice to it because there's so many references, there's so many cool skins that are coming out. This collaboration is absolutely huge. The reason this was probably greenlit in the first place was because of Attack on Titan. We've seen a huge collaboration with DBD and AOT, and this broke so many records. It even outsold so many chapters, and I know that firsthand. Because of that, it made sense to bring in another anime-style chapter. Dead by Daylight already has a huge following in Japan, so bringing in something like this, a super iconic character, a super iconic franchise, just makes a lot of sense. What's different from the AOT collaboration is that skins are just a tiny little peak and then it falls away. It's just a little bit of hype, whereas a character that's fully coming into the game will be here forever and people will always see it, and it sets up for future collaborations over and over and over. And we know from Matthew Cote that these things are probably here to stay for a while. All in all, I digress with all of my points. Tokyo Ghoul belongs in Dead by Daylight, and Dead by Daylight needs to continue pushing on these. They can still stay true to their nature and bring in some classical horrors like Jason, but pushing the bar more and more every single time is exactly what Dead by Daylight needs to survive in this environment and continue to thrive. And as I said, it's more pro than there are cons. And there honestly isn't nothing wrong or bad with Dead by Daylight becoming the Fortnite of horror. At the end of the day, there's little to no competition, so pushing themselves is the only way that they really can do something like this. And this is exactly the way that they need to do it. Overall, that's my opinion. As I said, I'm not an anime fan. This was the first ever anime that I ever watched, and I actually really did enjoy it, I gotta say. I'm not going to pretend like I read anything or watched beyond Season 1, but still I can find the appreciation that people have for it coming into the game. And this is definitely the direction that Dead by Daylight needs to continue to go in. So I hope that answers the big question. Does it belong in DBD? Yes, it does. And as always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.